for WPCY. Watch us now!
Poor Rock Hudson, after his horrible death from AIDS, seems no one wants to let him rest in peace. Now, a bitter battle between the star's last lover and his so-called best friend is dragging Rock's name through the mud again. Cursed or blessed, depending on how you look at it, these two children of famous stars were trying to make it on their own. But then Zaza's daughter and Mickey Rooney's son decided to take on the world together.
We have nothing to fear but fear itself. And of course, the boogeyman.
He's a perennial candidate for president, running on a platform of corny punchlines. But believe it or not, Pat Paulson has finally joked his way into public office.
Hello, everyone. I'm Penny Daniels, and this is Inside Report. The big screen literally sizzled with his incredible sex appeal. Women adored him. Men admired him. That's why the world was shocked when Rock Hudson died of AIDS in 1985. Shocked to learn of his secret gay lifestyle. And that was just the beginning. Since his death, stories of wild orgies and old lovers are still making headlines. Now, a new book brings out accusations about Mark Christian, Rock's last lover, and about how Rock may have gotten AIDS. In an exclusive interview, Mark talks to Inside Report's Janet Rose about the book, the allegations, and what he considers the truth about Rock Hudson.
In his glory days, Rock Hudson was the quintessential leading man. Tall, dark, and handsome, he epitomized a movie star, oozing with sex appeal. In his final days, he was weak and frail, just a shell of a once-and-forgotten movie idol. Rock Hudson's death from AIDS 5 years ago opened a Pandora's box unlike any Hollywood had ever seen. And now it's pitting Rock's last lover, Mark Christian, against Rock's longtime companion and confidant, Tom Clark. At the center of their controversy is this book by Clark, full of accusations and innuendo, all aimed at Christian. Clark says he had to write the book to clear Hudson's tarnished name. Christian claims it's full of lies. Clark only says he wants the world to know the truth about his best friend, Rock Hudson.
And we've got to stop and remember that because of Rock and his death, the world is aware of AIDS. Elizabeth Taylor is involved because of Rock. He brought this ghastly disease to the attention of the world. And he chose to do that.
Rock never told the world he had AIDS. He wouldn't tell me, a person who's having unsafe, intimate sexual contact with 8 months after his diagnosis. Why on earth would he tell the world?
It was that apparent omission that led to Christian's lawsuit against Hudson's estate. Though it's on appeal, he has been awarded $5 million. Clark will disagree, but according to Mark, Hudson was notorious for his wild sexual antics.
He would have what they would call blonde parties. This, again, was before my time, but according to Mark Miller, he used to schedule once a year in summertime these blonde pool parties where he would get the best-looking men in Hollywood, actors, models, and what have you, together for a party up at the house.
An orgy?
Maybe.
No one has ever denied that Hudson was bisexual or that he enjoyed sex a great deal. He had been married once and enjoyed the company of both men and women. The question, however, that does arouse angry discussion is exactly how he got AIDS.
Rock is very promiscuous. Not to say that promiscuity in itself is a crime, but it was just part of Rock's nature.
But Tom Clark, who describes his relationship with Hudson as two people joined at the hip, still thinks his once best friend got AIDS from a blood transfusion.
I'm convinced he had open-heart surgery in 1981, and during that surgery he had 7 transfusions. In 1981, hospitals were not testing blood.
He got it from sex, and there's no crime, no sin in getting it from sex. That's how most people have gotten it. I think it's a rather the slap on the face to all the people who have died of it from sexual transmission, to say that Rock was somehow the saint that didn't get it that way.
As a matter of fact, the hospital where he had the operation, like 3 years later, it was in the Los Angeles Times, sent notices to all the people who had had surgery during that time saying, please be tested we fear that some of our blood may have been contaminated.
The Los Angeles hospital where Rock Hudson had open heart surgery did not want to comment on camera, although officials told us for the record that after Hudson's death, blood bank records were checked and blood donors who gave blood to Hudson were contacted. All of them were found to be healthy and free of the AIDS virus, which would seem to indicate that Rock Hudson did not get AIDS from a blood transfusion. Rock Hudson, American institution that he was, may have been dead, but that didn't still the controversy that set off the battle between Rock's final lover and his former housemate. Clark claims that Hudson was afraid of Mark, that Mark threatened to tell the world about Rock's homosexuality, that he may have been blackmailing the star, that he was a liar and thief. Just last month, Mark slapped Clark with a $22 million lawsuit.
Characterizes me as crazy. Of course, he uses Rock's words. This is convenient to quote a dead man, because dead men can't be defamed or can't defame you. Basically, Tom had a lot of sour grapes, that he had been kicked out of the house by Rock and that I had moved in.
Although Clark denies that Rock and Mark had a long-time affair, Mark has much to show for his reported affair with Rock Hudson. This antique automobile, which Rock reportedly paid for to be rebuilt and refurbished. These priceless and rarely seen photographs of Rock Hudson. And this Hollywood restaurant, a favorite hangout for Rock and Mark, where they met in the early days of their affair.
Places like here that kind of began to open up with each other.
Mark remembers Rock Hudson as warm and funny and generous. But Tom Clark, who lived with Hudson for 10 years, says there was no affair, that Rock let Mark Christian live in his home for 2 years out of fear.
He threatened to ruin Rock's career.